Hello everybody, it's Josie here. I am doing my classics wrap up for the month. So for the month of March, I have read a fantasy themed classic because I am taking part in Femme Fantail, which is a readathon organized by Jean from Jean Bookish Thoughts. And it's all about reading women fantasy authors. So I thought that this classic would fit perfectly into that challenge. And it's this one over here. It's Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Now this book is obviously very well loved, very well read. I'm really embarrassed to say that this is actually the first time I'm reading the original story. So this version, this is an Oxford children's classic. And first of all, how cute is this? It's a nice little hardback. And I found this in a charity shop actually, and I really liked this particular edition of the book. And this particular edition of the book is also, it's completely unabridged, but it was really interesting. I didn't realize when I bought it, there's a note in the front of this. So it says that this is a reproduction of the original 1818 text, and the author did revise the text in 1831, and this version is the most commonly used today. However, this particular version, the Oxford Children's Classic series, prides itself on publishing unabridged and unrevised editions, and so we've preferred to use the original text. So this book, this version of Frankenstein, is the original 1818 Mary Shelley version. You will probably know what Frankenstein is about, but if you don't, it's basically Dr. Victor Frankenstein, who creates a monster. He takes parts and he animates a body. And then the story kind of kicks in about what the monster does once it's alive and animated. And like I said, I've seen various different versions in kind of fiction and in movies of this. And I always think, so first of all, I think there's two things. One thing, everybody always mistakes Victor Frankenstein for the monster. They talk about Frankenstein as the monster, and Frankenstein is not the monster. What I find interesting is that there was never a name for the monster in this book. So also, what I found interesting is that a lot of other forms of retelling, I guess, of Frankenstein that I've seen, there's a huge emphasis on Victor Frankenstein actually creating the monster, so that process of animating and creating the monster, and that's very emphasized. With this original text, that's a really tiny portion. I mean, you blink and you miss it. I mean, it's basically, I think, one chapter where he's in his lab and he's messing about and he's read some of these old medical texts and he decides to see if he can create and animate a body. And literally, I mean, it goes past like that. Like if you blink and you'll miss it. And then the main, like the rest of the story is Victor Frankenstein's story, and him and his father and Elizabeth, who's his cousin, and his mother, and kind of his musings after he creates the monster. And then the rest of it is, and this is the bit that I liked, is the actual story of the monster and the monster kind of talking, and you hear his story. So my thoughts on this. So I found Victor Frankenstein irritating, whiny. I hated the character. I hated the fact that he creates and animates this monster, takes one look at it and goes, oh shit, that's bad, he's horrible, I don't like it, and sort of casts it aside and then kind of continues on with his life. And really, really hates the monster where he was the one that created it. I find his character, I literally want to wring his neck. I found him irritating. I found him whiny. I had absolutely no sympathy for him. I really disliked Victor Frankenstein. The bit of the story that I love is the monster. And for me, it is an incredible musing by Mary Shelley on the nature of evil, appearance. I think it's actually incredibly relevant sort of in the modern society where we're so focused on how people look, how differences are so harshly judged, particularly differences in appearance rather than actually getting to know people's characters. And that's what I really love about this. I think when you read the monster story and really he just wants acceptance and he wants love and he wants somebody to treat him with softness and humanity, and all he gets back because of the way he looks is fear and hatred and people kind of casting him aside and being scared of him. And it's this thing where if enough people tell you you're a monster, is that what you turn into? Is that what you become? And I found that really fascinating. I loved that. I loved that portion of the book. And the more I kind of, so initially I put it down, and I think I gave it like 3.5 stars on Goodreads. And then I kind of realized I was thinking about it more and more and more, and thinking about that portion of the story. I think the Victor Frankenstein portion of just the whiny kind of taking no responsibility for what he's done, it annoyed me so much that it kind of irritated, it made me angry with the book a little bit. But the heart of the book for me is the monster. And I think if you can compare it to a little bit like Hunchback of Notre Dame as well, is that, you know, those appearances versus the reality. It's so deep in its themes, and really heartbreaking when you read how the monster just wants to be accepted and wants to be loved. And then when he goes back to Victor Frankenstein and says, I want you to create me a partner, someone, because I've realized that the human world doesn't want anything to do with me. I want you to create me something like me, that I can see myself in another being, and I want a partner that I can spend my life with. You know, that kind of yearning. And I think it is such a human condition, and is, again, so relevant in the modern society, is this idea that we're constantly connected, we're online, there's people all around us, yet we are so lonely, and we're just looking for that human connection, somebody to accept us as we are and love us. And also this idea of wanting to see yourself reflected in others. And I think, again, coming from the LGBT community, that's something that I know I have, and a lot of people in the community feel, wanting to see, you know, yourself reflected in the media, yourself reflected on screen and literature. And that goes for people of color, that goes for the transgender community, that goes for so many different walks of life that feel they're not represented, and feel lonely, and feel like there is nothing that reflects them, and therefore there must be something wrong with them, which I think is so sad and so heartbreaking. And I think the monster story really kind of gets to the heart of that for me. So upon reflection, if I take out the fact that I really hated Victor Frankenstein and I thought he was an arsehole, frankly, if I just focus on the monster, I think this book is brilliant. I think it's genius. I think maybe Mary Shelley was also a little bit ahead of her time in a way. And I think she did a wonderful job. Yeah, and I really loved it. So I am actually going to go back and revise my rating on it, because that's the part of the book, and that's kind of the heart of the book that I want to focus on. So yeah, so I really loved that, and that I would give, you know, 4 or 5 stars to. I just think it's incredibly relevant and incredibly poignant, and I would absolutely recommend reading this book. And I really liked reading the original, and I think that's really cool, just reading the original vision that Mary Shelley had for this book. So yeah, so those are my musings. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. Give it a read, see what you think, and until I speak to you guys again, bye.